the overall sentiments, the atmosphere that Netanyahu is kind of mired in this corruption trial. And here is just one example of what's been going around in terms of what's happening in the settler colonial Knesset. So it says, you personally initiate Qatar's money transfer to Hamas together with Mohammed al-Ahmadi. You bear responsibility for it. That was your personal order. In 2020, you sent Mossad chief Yossi Cohen. And then he goes on to say, along with Herzi Halavi to Qatar in order to increase the amount of money there. Why are you against the governmental commission? Because you know that all the meetings are recorded in minutes, word for word. And there you have Netanyahu's face of intransigence. Donald Trump sent a letter to President Herzog, and I'll pull that up as you're speaking, saying that Netanyahu should be pardoned of all of his crimes. And that has also caused a big storm inside of the Knesset about Israel's so-called independence. What do you make of this situation?
Yeah, it's what can I say? This is just another chapter in this long-running saga. What I'll say about Netanyahu, he's got an incredible survival instinct, and he's gotten this far. And if you think about just the total destruction of what's happened, what he's done to Israel's image internationally, their legitimacy internationally, and how that issue has fractured. First, the Democratic Party for the 2024 election, they suffered massively because of the Biden administration's support. Genocide Joe, that was the rallying cry. So that helped to elect Donald Trump. And of course, now Trump is suffering with the split, the fissure within the MAGA movement. And this is one of the key issues. Obviously, it's tied to the Epstein situation as well. But Trump going around like canvassing, other governments and hanging out in other parliaments, calling for, exoneration or pardon for somebody who's been embroiled in a corruption scandal for like years now. It's just unbelievable, like zero self-awareness from Trump. But I think this kind of shows he feels like he is at the peak of his powers. But I think it's just the opposite is true. I think Trump is right now probably heading into a ravine that is going to be inescapable because he's losing his own base. So that's kind of it. It's going to be open season on Trump, but not in the lawfare way, not in the TDS Trump derangement way. But there are like grounds for legitimate impeachment right now. Okay, just on the tariffs alone, it's totally unconstitutional, and he's basically trying to micromanage the U.S. economy. $25 trillion a year economy, is micromanaging it from the Oval Office. Where does he have the remit to do that, according to the U.S. Constitution? So Congress has ultimately power of the purse. So, but Trump's using it in a punitive way by attacking all these different countries, and he's making these wild claims that we're going to make this amount of money or that amount of money, like that means anything. He says, no, this is going to be fine. That's a Supreme Court argument. It's going to be fine because we're going to make a lot of money. Says who? Look at overall GDP figures. Wait till those numbers come out. You're probably going to see a contraction in the economy. Wall Street's doing great, but that doesn't mean the economy is doing great. It means Wall Street's doing great. It means that his cronies, the types of people he hangs out with, the sort of people that game markets, that run crypto scams and stablecoin scams, these types of people are doing really well. Okay, he believes that's his new base. Trump's new base is the elite financial class. So forget about the Rust Belt. Forget about the blue dog Reagan Democrats in Ohio and Michigan and Wisconsin. Forget about them. They're done. He got his election. So now he's basically going to cast them off in the same way the Democrats jettisoned the working class. That was the death knell of Hillary Clinton's failed presidential campaign, and ultimately the Democratic Party as a whole. He's going to do the same thing. He's in the process of doing the same thing. So the whole it's so gaudy. The relationship with Israel, the slavish kind of worshiping of this, his sugar mama, Miriam Adelson. It's just so disgusting. And if we're staying in West Asia, Danny, then the photo, I don't know if you've got the photo of Trump in the Oval Office.
I have more than a photo, but keep going.
with Jelani doing Donald Trump doing that fake smile that he does for the cameras. You notice Trump looks a certain way, but whenever there's a still photo, he does that cheesy fake smile, and that's his look. That's his Zoolander sort of photo look. And he's sitting there with the founder of Al-Qaeda in Syria, the deputy of Abu Bakr al-Baghdadi of ISIS, in our White House, in our White House. He thinks it's his White House, and he's going to allow a terrorist to hold court. And he's saying, "Oh, he's had a rough past. We've all had a rough past." What kind of rough past has Donald Trump had? I mean, how many millions of dollars did his dad give him to kickstart his real estate empire? Okay, Donald Trump did not have a rough past. Okay, maybe his relationship with Jeffrey Epstein is going to end up being his rough past, but according to recent emails leaked. But it's just unbelievable that he would compare. He would say that that's a prerequisite for success, that you have to have a rough past. Like there's people struggling across America who have had rough pasts, who have been dealt a bad hand. And Donald Trump saying that he's somehow legitimizing a life of head chopping as a sort of sworn enemy of the United States in the global war on terror. And he's saying that's a rough past. It's I don't know. It's just a lack of self-awareness and just a completely stupid worldview, just devoid of any kind of detail as to the real reality of the situation. But what it does is shows you what a fraud the entire war on terror was. Okay. And what's funny about this as well, this might be a controversial statement on my part, but I'll say it. There's a bit of a reverse double psyop going on. Even the people that oppose this are saying, "Oh, this is Al-Qaeda who did 9/11." So they're sort of falling into this psyop that 9/11 was micromanaged by Osama bin Laden in a cave in Tora Bora, and these 17 Arab hijackers, 7 of which were alive afterwards, magically, somehow masterminded 9/11. Okay, fine. If you believe that, great. But the reality is, the more we're looking at this, the fact that Israel has no problem with an ISIS leader running their neighboring country of Syria tells you a lot about who were the driving force behind the entire dirty war in Syria, from when it sort of kicked off in 2011 till the fall of the Assad government a year ago in Damascus. This was all for Israel. That's why you don't see any objection from the Israeli lobby, from IPAC, from any of these brain cells on J Street, or any of these think tanks or the Heritage or nothing. They're sitting there lauding this guy, this bearded head chopper in our White House, sitting next to the vice president, okay, and next to Tom Barak, who's this other chancellor that Trump has brought in. And Donald Trump is sitting there allowing these a head chopper that has slaughtered Christians, Yazidis, Alawites, Shmailis, who's running pogroms in Syria since Donald Trump became president, and he's got him in a suit, sitting in our White House. I mean, this is the ritual humiliation of the United States of America, by basically presiding, with Donald Trump presiding over it. The optics of this are so bad. It's worse than Zelensky.
So bad.
It's worse than Zelensky.
Yes.
Zelensky's nothing compared to this. Although Jelani has a leg up on Zelensky, at least he wore a freaking tie and a real jacket. I hate to give him any kudos.
Right.
But it's a joke. Donald Trump is a joke of a president at this point. It's not serious. And what he's doing to the economy, to the U.S. foreign policy, to, I think, the reputation of the office of the presidency, this is the lowest point for the United States. This is lower than Bush, believe it or not.
Yeah.
Bush, for all his faults, and he had many, the Iraq War, I'm not minimizing that at all, but at least he had some basic decorum. Trump doesn't have it. And it's kind of disgusting at this point. I don't know. There's nothing nice or friendly that you can say to gloss this over, Danny. It's so bad.
Well, who's it benefiting? Exactly. Who's it benefiting? I think we're seeing a major crash out because what is it? Less than a year into the administration, more and more people who, supported the guy, which I didn't advise, but there were a number of people who did. Now they're coming to realize, because Donald Trump is just telling them and then doing the exact opposite of what they wanted him to do. And let's just go over this crash out in this particular part of the world, because it's very important to everything that you just noted. Let's just watch first, amid the pardon scandal, Trump trying to pardon Netanyahu, the Knesset, which is no friend of Palestinians or of Gaza, there are people incredibly furious, and it's going viral because this is the mood across the United States, the West, and the world. Nobody is a fan of Netanyahu. Everyone is trying to find somebody to blame. And you have Donald Trump essentially kissing Netanyahu's ring and doing everything he can to maintain his power, even though there are major forces inside of Israel who simply want to get rid of the face of Netanyahu as the leader of their greater Israel project. But it gets worse than this. You said there is the picture. Well, I have a video. Here's Donald Trump very romantically welcoming Jolani, the head chopper, the Al-Qaeda leader, former Al-Qaeda leader, I guess we could say. But once you are, maybe it's one of those things that once one, you always are one. Here is that scene.
This is it. No. It's the best fragrance. Come here, man. I have no idea, sir.
So Donald Trump giving Jolani some cologne or perfume or whatever it is. It was complete and utter reverence for someone who was not elected and who has literally cut off heads in their terrorist activities, supported by the U.S., supported by Israel, supported by the worst forces in that region. And then I want to play this as well, Patrick. This is Jolani on Fox News being questioned about 9/11, and it was just absolutely, it was horrid. It was horrid because he did not seem even remorseful, and this is the guy that they are propping up. Here we go.
Have regrets that Al-Qaeda carried out those attacks that killed 3,000 Americans.
I was only 19 years old, so I was a very young person, and it didn't have any decision-making power at that time, and I don't have anything to do with it. And Al-Qaeda was not present right then in my area. So you're speaking to the wrong person about this subject. We mourn for every civilian that got killed, and we know that people suffer from the war, especially civilians who paid a hefty price for the war.
Mr. President, the White House has said that President Trump would like Syria to join the Abraham.
So, of course, they're going to talk about the Abraham Accords. There's no more details than that. But, Patrick, there was not much remorse there. This is the person that the U.S. has supported under Trump to lead Syria. So your reaction to all of this?
The question that the Fox News host stroke spokesmodel should have asked is, do you support, or did you at the time support the 9/11 attacks in principle? That would be the question to ask. Okay, obviously, if it was a real journalist, it's not, it's a spokesmodel. But so that was just a puff sort of interview. I mean, it's kind of a ritual humiliation for Fox. So it's a humiliation for the office of the president, for the country of the United States, for Fox News itself, which is meant to be a neocon platform that opposes terror, the global war on terror. They did that for 25 years. And they're platforming this guy. And to me, this is like Israel's way of really sticking it to the United States, saying, this is our guy, and you're going to be a gracious host to our guy, and we're going to humiliate you. And that's what Trump has done here. I mean, they had to sneak him in the back door, I heard. He didn't come through the front entrance of the White House. It's a very interesting detail there, but it's too much at this point. I mean, this guy is a criminal. He's not elected as president. He's not democratic. He hasn't done anything positive for Syria. He's just slaughtered a whole lot of people and balkanized the country. And he certainly hasn't said a word about the United States occupying a good chunk of Syria and the other foreign countries that are decamped there. No problem at all. So he has no belief of Syrian sovereignty. He hasn't said anything about getting rid of the Israelis out of the Golan Heights, occupying Mount Hermon. No problem with that. Or the fact that Israel liquidated Syria's military in the first 72 hours of this thug and his merry band of head choppers from Idlib taking over the capital in their Toyota fleet. Okay, nothing to say about any of that. So it's kind of a joke. I don't think he's going to, I'd be surprised how long Giuliani lasts, because his usefulness basically is finished for Israel and for the West. They got what they want. They've got strategic control of territory. They're breaking up Syria. Okay, so it's nothing positive for Syria that will come out of this. You're talking about lifting sanctions. Do you know how corrupt it is in Syria? This guy and his thugs are seizing businesses, okay, and saying that they were ill-gotten gains, property, businesses, because the person is the wrong ethnicity, from the wrong sect, or they were supposedly pro-regime. Therefore, any money they made or business they acquired or property is, quote, ill-gotten, according to their new Sharia, extremist Salafist interpretation of laws and morals. They just take it. They're just seizing it and handing it out to their cronies, and also allowing foreign jihadi fighters from, Uzbekistan and Uyghurstan and all these other Central Asian far-flung destinations, allowing them to collect on the booty some kind of entitlement, like this is the Crusades, but just the radical Salafist crusade version of this. And so Trump supports all this. There's nothing, he says, doing a really good job in Syria. It's a nightmare. I mean, what planet are these people on in the Trump administration? And then they say, this is the part I love. They say, oh, well, Syria's had a closed economy under the Assad regime, and this is why they're in debt, and so it's so poorly run, and it's bad, a terrible economy for everybody. That's because they were under the worst sanctions by the United States and the European Union. They got double teamed for going on 15 years. Okay, so of course the economy is going to be in shambles. Of course they're going to have hyperinflation of the Syrian pound. Of course there's going to be embargoes on everything you can possibly imagine, including agricultural equipment. Okay, then they get hit with a drought, and then the U.S. and U.S. intelligence, Israeli intelligence, backed the Arab Spring, paid for by Qatar, paid for by other Gulf countries. All these radical fighters trafficking billions in weapons in there to basically destabilize the country. In the United States of America, that Donald Trump represents, armed, trained, and funded all of these terrorists in Syria, and did so for a very long time, and are probably still doing it today, quite frankly. Okay, and so he has the gumption to stand up there and recognize this terrorist as if he is some legitimate head of state, when all he is a U.S. and Israeli puppet that is running pogroms as we speak in Syria. It's so far beyond the pale. I mean, history is going to look back as, Trump has some real dunce moments, but this isn't just stupid. This is kind of very malicious, very mendacious. He's recognizing the barbarity of these type of people that were allowed to basically trash the country of Syria for so long. And like he recognizes the barbarity and supports the barbarity of not just Giuliani, but the Netanyahu regime. And look at what they've done in Gaza. So you have ISIL and you have JSIL. You have the Islamic State of Iraq and the Levant, and then you have the Jewish state of Iraq and the Levant. Basically the same thing. Basically the same thing. A conquest, basically.
Yeah.
So it's Trump saying this is our values here. Sit next to me, Mr. Terrorist, ISIS head, Al-Qaeda founder in Syria. You sit next to me. I'm going to recognize you, and we're going to throw some money at you. We're going to send the IMF to make sure that you're properly bankrupt for the next 20 years. And they say, oh, it's going to be $200 billion to rebuild Syria. $200 billion. What's that? It's not aid. It's DFI coming from the Gulf or Jared Kushner's fund or whatever. Okay. They want to basically privatize everything, take it, asset strip it for every possible thing you can imagine, suck as much profit out of that as possible. And the people are going to be poorer than ever. And what are you going to have? A migrant flow. Another wave of migrants into Europe from Syria. And you can then send money to Tommy Robinson and the far right to scream, oh, here come the Muslims. Oh, more Muslims, more Syrians. That's what we don't need. It's ruining the white character of Europe. Right. But they support Trump and Israel, who are basically masterminding the destabilization, the complete collapse of the economies in these countries. I mean, if Elon Musk was a rocket scientist, he wouldn't need to be to figure this out. This is basic math. But you're dealing with a level of idiocy right now in the political class that to me is it's breathtaking. It really is. And the media somehow can't do basic arithmetic on any of this. And I mean, even the alternative media much of them are clueless as to what they're actually watching here. It's pretty unbelievable.
Yeah, it is. It's unbelievable to see, on the one hand, Trump begging for Netanyahu to be pardoned in something that almost reveals, and he's done this a few times with demanding a pardon of Netanyahu. He recently said that not only the bombing of Iran during the end of the 12-day war, but he recently told the media that the U.S. had a huge hand in the initial attack on Iran, which, of course, for the longest time, he was saying the United States had nothing to do with that. But now we're seeing, I think, all of the masks come off. We have, on the one hand, the United States pushing for its own agenda with Israel, vis-a-vis Israel, continue to support a government, a colony that is wildly unpopular in the United States, even among, as you said earlier, a big section now of those who supported him. Some of them have massive pockets and have a massive influence, like a Candace Owens. And then on the other side, supporting and not just supporting, but as you said, groveling over al-Jolani and not only bringing him to the White House, but making a very concerted statement that this is the future of U.S. Policy in West Asia, going so far as to talk about a military installation or military installations in Syria, which contradicts everything that Trump has said essentially for the last how many years? Decade, right? Like, this was his platform, was getting the U.S. out of Syria. Now he wants the U.S. back in Syria. Your thoughts?
I remember when he was during his first term, and he said, I mean, it's the U.S. put stakes down in Syria as Trump was coming into office. So 2017, and Trump inherited all of the Obama nation building crew, basically. And I think the first there were a few very likely characters in that, Brett McGurk being one of them. And Trump just grandfathered that whole project in. And then, 2 years into his term, raises this thing, like, I guess there was Bannon or probably somebody that still had a modicum of some ethical or moral compass, said, we need to pull our troops out of Syria. And as soon as he announced that, the neocons basically lost their rag, led by Lindsey Graham, and sort of having fits, and, the hands were waving. And basically they talked him out. And probably the Israeli lobby had some stern words to Trump. and they talked him out of that. And so the idea that U.S. should build a permanent base, you're talking about, a multi-billion-dollar major military complex near Damascus, and plus he's talking about a base in Gaza, a major military facility in Gaza. So you're right, Danny, this is going in the opposite direction of what he campaigned for, but everything he's doing is in the opposite direction of what he campaigned for. So it leads us to believe that Trump is a fraud politically. He lied, or he had no intention, or he didn't know what was involved in making any of those promises real. He just doesn't have a concept of how to follow through with all of these great, dramatic, and profound statements and promises about ending this war, bringing the troops home, doing that, the other, bringing jobs back to America. There's no new jobs being created in this economy. But just on the foreign policy front, there's nothing there that even resembles any of the things that got him elected. So of course his base is going to feel betrayed. They're going to realize that Donald Trump is just another charlatan, like every other corrupt charlatan, like every other politician that they all eschewed. And that's why they got behind Trump, because they really believed that he was going to be different, that he wasn't a swamp creature, that he's come from outside the swamp to drain it. But this is what happens. The swamp is a powerful ecosystem, and the swamp turns you into a swamp creature, whether you like it or not. And so Trump, he surrounded himself by some incredible grifters and charlatans and sort of borderline. And by the time this all fleshes out, you're talking about a whole bunch of criminal proceedings, actual crime, actual corruption, not the fake Trump derangement lawfare that preceded him, coming in his first term, and then during Biden's term in office. Actual corruption, actual graft, actual crimes, actual grounds for impeachment on multiple fronts. Totally trashing the U.S. Constitution, which for a Republican who masquerades as a conservative, or MAGA, which masquerades as a conservative movement, to be anti-constitutional, especially on the First Amendment, all to protect a genocide in Israel and to make Miriam Adelson happy and the Israeli lobby, that you're going to trash the U.S. Constitution, which you swore an oath. I know he didn't put his hand on the book this time. You notice that? Donald Trump didn't put his hand on the book, and he's trashed the U.S. Constitution. So, and all of his supporters in his inner circle are happy with this. They're all happy with it. Only a few people have broken ranks, but they're so enamored with the power that they really don't have any principles. So that's it for conservatism. Forget it. You've got rhinos and you've got neocon fascists now. Nothing in between. You've got Thomas Massey, Daniel McAdams, Ron Paul. I can count them on one hand, basically. There's nobody. So it's really dark. And it just shows you Israel is like an anvil that's chained to the presidency, and they've just chucked it over the edge of the boat. And there's no bottom for this. As long as you're tethering yourself to this country in the Middle East and you're arranging all of the U.S. assets, U.S. going further into debt, and its whole military footprint in the Middle East, everything, every naval asset, every air asset, every ground asset is to provide security for the state of Israel. It's not to protect the oil or anything else or trade routes. It's to defend Israel and Israeli interests. That's the entire U.S. defense array in the Middle East and Central Asia, all of it. They say, no, it's to contain China. Maybe you can make that argument in Afghanistan, towards Pakistan, and of course, East Asia. Okay, we can make that argument. And maybe you can make that argument with AFRICOM and the sacking of Libya and the partitioning of Sudan had a huge damage to Chinese interests. Okay, maybe you can make that argument. But the overwhelming, obvious situation is all of this is for Israel. If you look at the power they have in directing U.S. foreign policy and U.S. money and where we spend our money around this region, they have total power over Congress, Senate, and the presidency, and the media as well. And there's no debate of whether that's the case or not. If you want to look at the seed framework for that from the Clean Break document, or Rebuilding America's Defenses, or the Project for a New American Century, or Netanyahu's own books that he wrote and is canvassing around Washington for 20 years. Okay, it's pretty clear who's the dominant driver of U.S. policy in the region. Okay, this is from mid 1990s, or let's say early 90s till the present. So, I mean, I'm talking about the petrodollar anymore. It's long after. So that's the reality of it. And people got to wake up and smell the coffee and realize what this is all for. It's not really for American interests, not economically, and certainly not politically, and certainly not for its international reputation, and certainly not for its global trade empire. Just the opposite, in fact. And this president is presiding over the controlled demolition of the U.S. economy and the reputation globally. Donald Trump, lay it all at his feet. He's done more in 1 year than some presidents managed to screw up in 2 terms. He is incredible. I can't imagine what the next 3 years are going to have in store for us with this guy. And the clowns that he has surrounded himself with. It's embarrassing. It really is. I mean, it's even worse that the Democrats are paralytic and they can't really do anything about it because half of them support this anyway.